From New York and on the new Hot 97 app, Ebro in the morning. On Hot 97.
Ebro in the morning, Laura Stiles, Rosenberg. Give it up for State Senator Brian Benjamin, who we met in Harlem.
Thank you.
When we were up there with the Peace Mobile. Thank you for setting that up, your team, setting us up at the State Building up there.
Erica Ford gave me a call, and we go way back. I was working with her and Tamika Mallory and Sharpton, doing a lot of good work back in the day. So when she called, said we're coming to Harlem, I was there.
That's it.
I was there.
Now, you are from Harlem?
Yes, I was born in Harlem Hospital, grew up in Brooklyn and Queens. So I'm kind of like a city boy because I was born in Harlem. We left there when I was very young, moved to Brooklyn,
City
Star
boys
City.
is hot out here. You know the city girls, city boys. You know what I'm saying? You hot out here.
That would be an interesting flip.
No, that's the thing on the internet. You didn't know the city boys is out here moving.
No.
Because, girls can't have anything to themselves. So it was a hot girl summer.
Right.
And you
So
had
it's got- right.
Hot boy summer.
and then it was the city girls, and you had these dudes trying to
City
act like
boys.
Yeah. So you a city boy.
So yeah, and then my parents they live in Queens right now. My parents bought the house. Remember Young MC?
Yeah.
Bust the Move. We actually bought the house his parents had. So I grew up, from 13 on, we in the same bedroom. I'm not saying it was a good thing.
Yo,
I'm
this is
just
a
saying
hip hop
it's a
historic
fact.
landmark.
Hold on, I don't even understand this because I didn't even know Young MC's parents were from New York.
Yes, they were Hollis, Queens. Actually, Hollis, Queens.
You know
Village.
that?
I had no idea.
That's
I'm
right.
from Hollis.
That's
Bust
right.
a move. I thought he was from the West Coast.
I thought he was
this
from
whole time.
LA.
Well, they moved out there, but he literally, his formative years were in Queens on 109 and 211th Street.
Don't just stand there.
Crazy, bust that move.
No, by the way, I mean, for the record, though, we can all make jokes. Different kind of hit. Bust a Move was a different kind of hit.
It was a very different kind of
Yo,
hit.
he won a Grammy.
It was a
my God, he did?
smash. It's almost so big, it's not even a song anymore.
Yo, and by the way, I think he still wants to punch me in the face.
Are you serious?
Yeah, because I hated the song. I've always hated the song. Always hated the song.
Really? What about Funky Cole Medina?
Nah, I like Funky Cole Medina for some reason. I like Tone Loc. I just never
Yeah.
liked
Oh,
Bust a Move.
why'd I switch from Young
Yeah,
MC to Tone Loc?
you moved a
See,
little
that's
bit.
the problem. And Tone Loc will bust your ass.
Young
Young
MC.
MC
Young
was
MC
kinda-
probably bust
but
your
he
ass.
got a jack too. I mean, you a little jack too, Ebro, but he had a little.
No,
by the way,
what's up?
Back in the day, all
Old
the
school rappers you don't want to smoke
No,
with.
and all the rappers perceived as soft,
Right.
will bust your ass quick.
That's a fact.
Yo, he might have come up with Bust a Move in your living room.
Crazy. Can you believe it? And actually, when we were going to check out the apartment, he was literally sitting. He had a bunk bed. He was sitting in the bed, just kind of like going through his old things. And I walked in the room. I was like, "Oh, what's up, man?" it was crazy.
Yo, I really love the idea of it, the deal, that's being done, and you guys are moving in, and he's still there. And he's like, all right, well, time for you to
Time for you to
get
bounce. Time for you to bounce. Move on.
Bust
move
a
on.
move. Get your ass up out of this house.
Well done. Now, I wanted to understand what's happening in Harlem.
Sure.
Okay. Gentrification, a lot of people moving in, a lot of historic landmarks being sold.
Correct.
I read a lot of articles. People are blaming community boards. People are blaming politicians. People are blaming the Harlem Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
People are blame.
Sure.
I have my own opinions on it, but let me hear from you on why this is happening. How come Harlem is basically losing its identity?
So that's a multifaceted question,
Yeah.
right? So one part of this is the fact that for a long time, Harlem was never really owned by Harlemites, right? It was a lot of times there was landlords and people who owned Harlem who didn't live in Harlem. The
Well, I want to
face
point
of
out
Harlem-
that that's the biggest problem.
Right. So that's issue number one. In terms of when people visually saw Harlem changing, they attributed that with gentrification, but that was not necessarily the beginning part. Harlem people of color never really owned Harlem, but claimed the streets and owned the streets, but not the real estate. That's number one. Number two, a lot of black churches who have traditionally owned a lot of the real estate, number of them have gotten into issues. Why? Population's getting older, and a lot of their memberships are dying off. And so they just don't have the ties to keep the churches going. But guess what? Property tax is still going up. All these utility bills are going up. And
they're not making enough money.
Not making enough money. And a number of them have been reached out to by some of these developers saying, hey, look, I'll pay you a little. And there's been a lot of stuff that's happened.
Right.
And some of them, in my opinion, could have come together. We could have had conversations, could have been preventative. But what happens is, in my office, I will tell you, every time someone comes to our office to complain about housing, it's always at the last minute when you almost have nothing else you can do, as opposed to being proactive and trying to put stuff together in the first place. So that's another thing. I also believe that we tend to believe that we can't go to each other, right? You know, when you got a problem, people don't want to share that problem. There are a number of developers of color who could have been a part of solutions that would have kept some of the properties intact in the community. I will say one thing for Abyssinian Baptist Church. They had a lot of property, got into some issues, and they proactively reached out to try to make sure that there was still black ownership in Harlem.
And so I'm hearing communication, I'm hearing proactivity.
But there's another issue, which is that the city of New York owned a lot of real estate for a long period of time, and the way in which they transitioned that real estate to the outside community, you know, probably could have been done better. But that happened. That was happening from like the early '90s, right? So there, you know.
So would you say most of that transition took place under Bloomberg?
Correct. And
Because,
some under yes, and some under
and the
de
reason I
Blasio,
say
but
that,
most,
you know,
most of it was under Bloomberg. Yes.
Well, the reason I say that is because,
and even before that, Giuliani.
Well, Giuliani
right?
too.
Right. I mean, but
Bloomberg was in office for
12
years.
Correct. Absolutely.
And paid for the final, like legit was like, now I want to stay one more term, paid everybody for it, passed the law, and then when it was finished, changed the law back.
Right. But everyone wanted that third term too. He didn't do
No,
it by
they
himself.
wanted those checks he was writing.
Well, that's true too. That's true too. But let me say this. There's another issue, which is that when people come to our office, they don't come saying, there's a gentrification problem, I'm worried about that. They come saying, I can't find housing for myself. So let's talk about that really quickly. There are right now, in the city of New York, about 1 million families, households, that are in the 30% of AMI and below range. This is people making $35,000, $40,000 and below. About 1 million of them. We presently have 425,000 units of housing for that population. So that's about over 500,000 households that don't have adequate places to live. In addition, we have about 61,000 homeless people. I think it's more than that, but let's just call it 61,000 for argument's sake. We don't have a comprehensive plan to address that issue. And that to me, that's the issue. Yes, to me, that's a big issue because, quite frankly, that's what we deal with more. We don't deal with the intellectual. By the way, the intellectual conversation about what happened in the 20s and how it transitioned to we deal with I don't have a place to live. I'm getting pushed out of my home, and so
the real everyday stuff.
Yeah, so we passed rent protection laws in the state, which were important to help keep people in their homes. But we've got to deal with the production, the supply and demand issue of a lot of households, seniors, low-income individuals, who don't have adequate opportunities for them, and we as the city need to produce it.
How long you been in office?
2 years.
2 years.
2017.
And this says you've built affordable housing, created over 1,000 units of environmentally sustainable affordable housing while helping young people develop work skills, secure good construction jobs.
Yes.
Through community youth programs.
So before I was a senator, I built affordable housing in New York. I was part of a minority-owned business where we just wanted to build affordable housing. I could have gone and worked at some big company, but I wanted to work with a partner of mine and really focus on this issue of producing affordable housing that was sustainable. We also did some good things in terms of hiring kids from Youth Build, people who had some issues, were arrested and maybe dropped out of school, and we helped give them opportunities, and some of them are growing and doing great things. Some people are starting their own companies. So I just feel like that's the right, you could do well and do good at the same time. I come from that mindset, and so I try to do that. That was something I did before becoming a senator. So when I got elected, I left that to be a senator. So that's weird. That's part of my background.
Well,
And go ahead. So I was just gonna say, Laura, before you start the next thought, is there a solution? Is there a financial solution to this housing crisis?
Absolutely. The solution is very simple. We have 1 million households, 425,000. We need to build 500,000+. Now, the way we do that is where it gets really messy, right? Everyone says...
Because that's where I was going to come in.
Right?
Because every time we've seen solutions, right,
Right,
for homelessness and, they wanted to build, a complex in Queens, nobody wants this in their neighborhood. So you see communities getting together, protesting. So it's like people want a solution. They just don't want it near them.
Correct. But that is where you get to political leadership, in my opinion, right? I mean, it's not our job to just always do what the crowd's calling for. If that was the case, then we would have never ended slavery, would have never ended Jim Crow. We have to make tough decisions and say, listen, we have this issue. let's come up with a comprehensive plan and sell the comprehensive plan. Right now, de Blasio has a plan to build 200,000 units of affordable housing, right? That's his big plan. Problem with his big plan is it doesn't target those at the lowest end of the scale. I used to do affordable housing, so I know it could build a range of numbers. It could be kind of more middle income, blah, 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 blah. So we need to say, look, this is the issue, and this is our comprehensive plan to do that. That's got to come from City Hall.
Well, and also they got to change.
And then get us behind it. And it's going to be tough for some people. Some people are going to.
But they got to change what affordable means.
Well, that gets, but everyone knows the numbers, right? The area median income is what it is. We know where if you go on the mayor's website, you can find out right now what I just told you. I didn't,
Yeah.
So it's right there. So we know what the numbers are. It's the political, well, first of all, there's the strategy. Then there's the political will to implement a real strategy. We don't suffer from lack of great ideas in the city. We suffer from lack of great execution in this city, right? I can't tell you how many people have the greatest punchlines and get on the press. And
that's at a national level, though, too.
That's on every level.
Yeah.
And so, but my point is when you're an executive, you're a mayor, you're a governor, when you have jurisdiction over land, right, the city, then you got to handle that. And I just think that we have too much great talk.
What do you say to people who, okay, so let's just say, right? I am a single mother, I have kids, and right next to me, right, they're going to build like, not affordable housing, but like shelter for the homeless,
Correct.
right? And I'm scared.
Of course.
Because I don't know how it's going to affect my family. I don't know what's happening. What do you say to those people? Because it's like, is there something that the public doesn't know? Like certain rules that go into effect, certain things that...
How do you make people comfortable with that?
like how does that work?
So we have a one-off way in which how we do these things, right? So what tends to happen is there's some sale, some land, people don't really know about it, and then all of a sudden they hear, oh, there's going to be a shelter in 2 days, and people scream and yell. That's just a completely wrong way to do it. I believe you got to take a step back and start from, okay, we have this homelessness problem. Here's where we think we should put these sites. Then you have conversations with the community, and you don't put them. I think you should put them more closer on commercial strips, right? I mean, but now there's some people who have issues with that, but I just think
And people live in the commercial strips too. So that's
well, it depends on where. Again, we have a city of 9 million people. We have a lot of land, right? I think we can think through how best to do that. Right now, we're putting folks in hotels sometimes, $250 a night to have someone in a shelter system. Guess what? If you can take that and build real housing. Now, where you put it, how you do it, we could figure that stuff out. But I just think there's a way to bring. I used to be chair of a community board before I was a developer. Before I was a senator. There's you can bring tough things to people. You just have to do it in a respectful way and engage people, right? There might be unique issues with that single mom on her block. That's not the same thing at another site. So you tailor the offering to the solution, but that requires real communication. Quite frankly, I was chair of the community board on the Bloomberg and de Blasio, and the communication from one administration to the next administration was not much different. Things were just shoved down our throats. And that's a fact. So for me, we as Democrats, we as people who believe in communication and consensus, we should employ that. And in this conversation, it usually doesn't happen. Many times when you hear about a homeless shelter, it's like last minute. And then I got people calling me, they're putting it on the block. No one told us that. That's great. And you're right. People don't generally want these on their block. But for me, if there's a fair share plan that says, look, we're going to put one on the Upper East Side, right? We're going to put one in Soho, and then we're going to put one in East Harlem or Central Harlem. That's a fair point. But we get bombarded in my district, East Harlem, Central Harlem, with a lot of the facilities, and it's just not fair. So a lot of times when I push back, it's because, wait a second, I thought we were going to distribute these fairly across the city. What about Staten Island? Last I checked, I haven't heard of one in Staten Island. So that to me is...
I think people in Manhattan would be fine with that. I was going to say, though, it's funny because I, like Laura, I totally feel the importance. And then if I'm just honest with myself.
Right.
And you were to say on my specific street, which is so peaceful, across the street directly from the entrance to my doorman building,
right,
they're going to put a full shelter there. I'm just gonna be honest. I cannot imagine I
That's
would
how
be
everybody
pleased.
It's everyone's response.
There used to be one somewhat
Now,
close to my apartment.
what if they told you it was only gonna be available for 50 people? It was small. It wasn't like hundreds of people.
That helps. That instantly does help, right?
Or what
You
if they
could-
told you it's a shelter for single mothers?
that would also help, but you know what I'm saying. So like, there are ways to make it
But
help.
I think there's ways to have conversations to talk about, okay, yes, the boogeyman is coming, but I'm saying this is the specific issue that's happening on your block so that people can be informed, understand, and say, well, you know what I really care about, this block has a lot of kids at this age, and what we really care about is blank. Okay, great. And you can work that out. I just feel like that part has to happen as opposed to just.
But I think
being shut
also
down your
too,
throat.
there's.
But it's always gonna be uncomfortable. People are gonna always be uncomfortable.
Yes.
But you can make decisions
But
to
I do
lessen
think
that.
some of these shelters
Just
can be
comfort.
made smaller.
Sure. Yes.
That's a
Right.
big deal because you're right. When it's hundreds of people,
Well, because here's the problem:
it's-
when they're massive,
Right.
when there's hundreds of people in there, I think it opens the door for other problems where you have single moms with kids dealing with different types of homeless
Understand.
people versus a place that is specifically tailored A, for certain types of people, and B, smaller so that the administration there can even handle the amount of people that are in there.
Let me ask you all a question. Have you ever heard of a community town hall or forum on this topic?
No.
That's the right. So
Wait, they may have started around the people who didn't want to have it in their neighborhood.
Right, but that's
Right,
always,
right.
but that's always,
That's always
that's
there.
reactive. That's
Right,
reacting
right,
to a
right,
problem.
right.
So you're trying to just force something down, and so you have to have this meeting
Right.
because the electors are pissed off. No, I'm saying is starting up front, comprehensively, plan, and engaging in dialogue, so people can have these conversations, and then you can tailor the offerings to make sense. Because I think we're all good people in New York City, most of us. We want there to be housing for homeless. We want people to have homes. It's just, you have your
I
own
also
personal issue.
believe this.
You just got to do it right.
I
That's
also
my
believe
point.
this, especially in New York City. If you live in a neighborhood that because of the prices of the real estate has legitimately made it too expensive for people to find homes,
Right.
you need to be a part of the solution also.
I agree.
And your neighborhood also needs to be a part of the
agree.
solution
I agree.
because it's your fault that people can't find a place to live.
that's very interesting and,
And if
true.
you go back to Harlem, to your original point about gentrification, I mean, Harlem has such easy access to downtown. I mean, I can take the 2, 3, the 4, 5, 6, the A, B, C, D.
Oh, convenience
So
is
the
why-
conveniences, and so
yeah.
as Harlem became safer and more people wanted to live, there was kind of like an upward move. I mean, Upper West Side is feeling gentrification like no one else, but because it's white on white, it's just not as toxic and hot and heavy press-wise as the black on white issue.
Oh, wait,
that
I'm
happens
not
more
a
in Harlem.
gentrifier in my neighborhood, am I?
You're
might
on the
be.
east.
No, I'm the West.
Oh, you're
no,
Upper West.
don't you ever
West.
dare disrespect.
You live
me
in my
with that.
district? Where do you live?
73rd.
I don't know. Right,
You're
right
where are you?
underneath. I'm 80. I started 86.
So that's where I
Central
used to
Park
live. So I
West.
lived at 86 and 96.
Okay.
And now I'm at 73rd.
So you left me, man.
I did.
Oh,
Wait,
man.
so who's the gentrifying then? Because I feel my problem with my neighborhood is that it is so like me, and I didn't quite. I know it sounds ridiculous. I did not quite realize it when I moved in, and then I started like kind of walking around over the last 2 years, and I've been like, wow, this is problematic. Like everyone is the same here. So what is the gentrifying that exists there? Or you mean only further up?
I'm talking. What I'm saying is that because the price of housing in the downtown core, like Soho, et cetera, has just become so much expensive. People just have been just pushing their way up.
So that's the gentrifying is people who wouldn't have been on the Upper West Side before, even though they're also
They
white.
would have rather been in Soho. They would have rather been in Chelsea, but it's too expensive. They just go.
and they keep getting up.
Right.
Senator Brian Benjamin, you have a bill where you want to divest from private prisons,
That's correct.
making New York the first state to completely be done with private prisons.
Right,
How's
so-
that going?
So we passed the bill. Let me take a step back. So when I first got elected, May 2017, my first meeting I had with some of the council, and I said, has the New York State Pension Fund completely divested from private prisons? Because as you might have heard, the city divested from private prisons. The city controller divested from private prisons, Scott Stringer, and people said, "Oh, well, the state has divested as well." So I just wanted to be specifically sure. Has the state divested fully? And the answer was, Mostly. I'll say, well, I don't know what
so
mostly
the answer is
means.
no.
The answer is no. So, and what had happened was there was about 10 million. It's not a big number, but it's significant in terms of the moral component of it. About $10 million that was invested in index. We were trying to track certain index funds, and in those index funds were these stocks. And so to track that, the state had to purchase that stock. And so
So it was a part of a larger fund.
it's part of a larger strategy. But my argument was it's not a significant amount relative to the $200+ billion size of the pension fund, but it means so much in terms of what we're saying as a community in terms of privatizing incarceration, right? And so it was a long fight, but I introduced a bill. We got that done, okay? So, and State Controller Tom DeNapoli got it done. It was exciting. I introduced a second bill, which is a bill that we just passed, to say all banks should not lend to private prisons. That's a second issue. One is just the investment. The second issue is, can Bank of America, can Goldman Sachs, can so-and-so lend to these private prisons to give them the oxygen they need to build and grow? And so I introduced that bill.
So if you're a bank that banks in the state of New York, and that's your home office.
Yes, if you're a state chartered bank, I have a bill that will not allow you to lend to private prisons at all. Now, that bill passed in the that was a trickier bill, as you could imagine. But Senate Majority Leader Andra Stewart-Cousins, we met, she got it, we got that passed in the Senate. We got more work to do in the Assembly, but I believe we'll get that done next year, to be frank, and I believe we'll get the governor to sign that bill. But to me, funding is funding. There is investing, but it's also lending. I want us to not invest or lend, and right now we have banks that have done that. But some of our banks have single-handedly decided to stop. J.P. Morgan Chase said, we're stopping. Can we see the public pressure? We're stopping. Bank of America said we're stopping. Wells Fargo, we're stopping. So a number of banks have stopped, and the private prison companies, their stocks have been taking a hit going in the right direction from as far as I'm concerned. But we need to get out of the financing of mass incarceration through private investments. You should not have a private motivation. Think about this. If you are in the business development, the marketing department of a private prison, what are you thinking about, right? How to get more people incarcerated,
right.
how to pay, how to give money to elected officials,
police
so that
unions.
all that stuff, and you're
so you can put more pressure on communities that are already under siege, so you can get more people incarcerated.
Exactly. That should only be done in publicly. There should be no private prisons. That's my philosophy, and I believe that we're on our way in New York, and I'm pushing it.
Where are you at on marijuana? I believe that on recreational. We had Senate Majority Leader Stewart-Cousins up here. We talked to her about what was going on. We talked about the senators who voted against this last bill and why, et cetera, et cetera.
So I am presently not on board with the bill. I am in favor of legalizing marijuana. I'm not in favor of a bill that doesn't have a clear path to the guys on the corner from our community having clear abilities to have real economic change in their lives. What do I mean by that? Right now, the way the bill is structured, it says that there will be dispensaries in the communities, right? But you know who can get and who's probably going to get the majority of those? Bodegas. Now, I don't have a problem with bodegas, right? I go to my bodega like anyone else. But my point is, why can't there be a distributor license for the guy right now who's out there so that he can get the marijuana from the grower and then have his own distribution system? Why did it have to go through
his own business?
I don't want it to only be right. I don't want it to only go through a retail dispensary, because if it only has to go through a retail dispensary, that's way more expensive. That's way more cost prohibitive to people on the street. And I feel like if we been getting arrested for this thing and all of that, the folks on the street should have an opportunity.
So then how do you manage the number of licenses that are out there?
Well, there's a way to do that. You can give distributor licenses in a way that makes sense. You look at this, we're going to hire a director of cannabis management, and it's going to be,
what's your business plan? What's your
they'll
background?
Figure all that stuff out, and there'll be RFPs, and then you can say, look, they'll have different locations, and you can apply for a license for here. That's what we do with real estate. Why can't we do the same thing with cannabis? And so my issue is, and I've told all the folks involved, look, I'm on board with legalizing marijuana, but I am not on board with unleashing this huge industry, and then when I look up, the only people making the money. We're going to talk good talk about who everyone's going to be involved and all the rest of it. And yes, the expungement of records, I believe in all that, and I'm all there for it. But there's going to be a real business opportunity here. And I want the folks who, quite frankly, are doing the business now to be able to participate. And the way it's set up right now, you know how hard it is to get to open up your own store in a commercial space? You got to do like 15 year lease. You have to have real money in the bank. You got to have good credit, all that stuff. My position is I should be able to get, one of those storage spots, right? And, and put this together.
But you want to limit the number of licenses, right? Or you want a process to actually be able to get a license?
I want it to be more accessible who can get a license.
Got it.
And the way it's structured now, it's structured more for bigger, stronger entities who, by the way, a number of them are already in the medical marijuana business and cannot wait for this thing to open up. And by the way, I'm not hating against that. God bless that. My point is, I want to look right.
I already have to go to the bodega to buy overpriced toilet paper late at night. Do I need to go there for overpriced weed as well?
And I don't mind them having it too. I agree with your point. I think there needs to be some more specifics
and so
detailed in
that's what I said.
Those smaller licenses. How many of them are there? And and how it's going to be managed.
Right.
Now, because they tried something like this, and this is why I say that.
Right.
I think Washington State tried something like this. And what happened in Washington State was, because it's a business license, which requires, like you got to fill out some paperwork, you got to pay taxes, you got to do certain things. What ended up happening was all of those small individual licenses ended up getting bought by the major corporations anyway, because those smaller guys couldn't
put it together.
They just couldn't manage a business, right? Because it's one thing to just do something, it's like the kid who wants to cut haircuts after school. It's like, yo, come by the crib, $2 haircuts, $5 haircuts. But then it's like, yo, you can't cut hair at the crib.
Right.
You got to actually get a location. You got to do all these other things. And it ends up falling flat anyway, which is why I say, and I've had these conversations before, there needs to be, while there may not be that solution in the original package, what type of investment in small business incubators and entrepreneurial investments per community are going to take place? And by the way, there's other ancillary businesses. It doesn't necessarily have to be about the weed.
And
it could be about, extraction, growing, selling other things, shampoos, lotion. Like there's tons of other businesses around the recreational thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be about the plant.
But I'm all for that. But I have seen where we unleash new industries.
Oh, for sure.
And if you don't do it right,
that's right.
People control market share. And then by the time we get around to, oh, wait a minute, we forgot to do this, forgot to do that. Oh, let's do this. It's all over.
That's right.
And to me, I'm not down with it. So my position has been, if there's a real and I've been saying this for 2 years, by the way. If there's a real effort to figure this out, I'll be on board. Otherwise, you got to get to 32 without me, and that's just what it is. Because I don't want on my conscience that I helped unleash this industry, and then I look up and it's only certain people who got all the business
and all the money.
Yeah.
And I'll even say this. I think one of the major mistakes we've had this conversation is that everybody's just talking about smoking weed.
Right.
And expunging records, and not enough people are talking about health and wellness, opioid addictions, prescriptions, and these other things that I believe more of a larger voting population is affected by, because grandma and grandpa are going to get these expensive prescriptions. People are addicted to other substances, and also the wear and tear on liver and kidney and kidney transplants and things like that, because people have just been popping pills for years on end.
Speaking of which, before let's get out of here, what can be done about Juuls? Because this problem of vaping, it's been looked at initially as only a teenage problem, and now people are just showing up in hospitals with collapsed lungs.
Bloomberg's philanthropy
he
just announced $150 million going into basically squashing the whole vaping business and really, because he was like, look, we had teenagers off cigarettes and now here's this Juul thing, and it's based in the flavors.
Marlboro bought into Juul for $14 billion. So your $150 million is going up again. There's a lot of money there, and people get overly caught up on the fruity flavors.
Right.
It's not just the fruity flavors. That's the teenage part.
The nicotine.
It's the nicotine. It's the amount of nicotine, but that isn't even the thing, because They don't know what's happened. They don't know what you're taking in.
We need real education on this. Now, I've been assigned on the Brad Holman's bill. I'm against e-vaping and all that. I don't even really know the whole space. I just know that there's some real issues here. But we got to educate our kids about what's in this stuff. And that right now that's not happening as much. And so I believe that needs to happen. But I think in New York State we're going to do the right thing on vaping. Absolutely.
Yeah, it needs to stop though.
But you know, making something illegal does not stop it from happening, as we already know with marijuana, right? So the real issue still, there's got to be education about this is a real health risk. Because me and my wife were talking about, and we were like, we got to talk to our little cousin. We don't know what's going on, but we're hearing what's going on, and it's scary.
Well, and have you heard that even the THC vape pens are
all vaping is a problem.
Right.
The reason I think it's popping up faster amongst juuling is because people do it so frequently, right? So I think you're seeing it happen
because it doesn't
faster.
smell. I heard it because it doesn't. You don't have the odor.
You have to remember, there's two layers to this. This is you don't know yet what the cancer risks are,
right?
And these other things are not cancer risks.
Well,
this
and then
is
also,
new
if you
health
don't know,
concern.
and if you don't know what's in your oil or whatever it is you're vaping, right? Because they're putting foreign carriers in those things, like different concentrates and things, not even just the flavors.
No, not the flavors. The vehicle to make it an aerosol.
Right.
That's where the problem is.
Right.
But this is going to keep getting worse. Every week there's more people going to hospitals with their lungs falling apart.
As that happens more and more, that'll just force the word out. But no, we have been on top of this issue as I'm on the health committee, and I know this has come up, and you know, we're on the right path with it. But I think we got to deal with. I feel like listen, we electeds, we make decisions, we do things. A lot of times we do things the majority of the community doesn't know or care, right? So I think what has to happen is when the media and folks like yourselves put this out there, that I think has a real impact in terms of the usage.
Yo, his name is Brian Benjamin. He's from Harlem. He's a senator in the state level, and you've been there for 2 years. And
that's
much
right.
success. We appreciate the honest dialogue too, man.
Absolutely. Thank you for
man.
having me. I really appreciate it.
One time, Brian Benjamin.
Right, thank you.